mantra is repeated words repeated with intention, right? And some people say that mantra is like a mind protector. And I do love this definition because, it does remind us that a lot of yoga talk, right, is about suppressing the thoughts or overcoming the thoughts, overcoming the thinking mind, the monkey mind, squishing the ego. Like it all kind of has this implication that like mind and ego are bad, 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 and we must get rid of them, right? But this definition of mantra is so nice because it's like if we wanted to protect something, then we must see it as precious and valuable in some way. So I really like that definition in terms of protecting the mind, protecting the mind. In my younger days, I used to always want to know what I was singing, right? I would want to know the meaning so that I could know what I was saying. And in some ways, that makes perfect sense because then we can kind of orient our intention a little bit more accurately at times. But as I've become more involved in the practices, I've also come to learn that sometimes it's nice to sort of sing and experience the mantra sort of before you might know every little bit of the meaning, and just letting the mantra affect you and feeling the effects without even so much necessarily needing to know every part. In this one, the word Bhagavan, it's a name for the divine, and it comes from this root word bhaj, which means to, originally meant to sort of divide and separate, and then becomes bhaga, which means to enjoy or delight or, to sort of take pleasure in. So it's interesting. Bhagavan means like one who possesses the quality of being able to take delight in all things, of joy in all things. So like the one who possesses divine delight, right? Which is very interesting as a name for the divine. And in years past, I've been maybe like a little hesitant to do a gratitude practice, even though every teacher in so many traditions recommends doing some sort of gratitude practice in some form or another, right? And all the great teachers, Pema Chodron and Thich Nhat Hanh and all those teachers, they all say, make sure you're pausing to feel the sunlight on your skin. Make sure you're pausing to taste the sip of coffee. Pause to smell the rose. Pause and feel the warm water on your hands while you're washing a dish. So, even when you're doing chores, Thich Nhat Hanh says, take delight in it. Feel everything that there is to feel about the sensation of washing the dishes, for example, right? So I have since started just in a notes app, a little, the date, and I just note a little delight or a little moment of gratitude or a little enjoyment that happened each day. I think my earlier resistance to it was this, that I felt that if I was suffering, if I was having a hard day or having a hard time, a period of time, a season, many years, whatever, that forcing myself to write down a gratitude or a delight or a joy would be somehow like suppressing it would be like faking, if I'm grieving and then I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful, that it would seem disjointed, or like it would seem like I was forcing something or repressing something. And I think it's important to notice that potential pitfall. We of course don't want to be squeezing real and genuine feelings out in distorted ways, right? However, what I have found is that if you just keep it really genuine, if really the thing you can put down is like, I'm so glad it rained yesterday so that I didn't have to water the garden, so that the plants could enjoy some rain after such a hot spell, right? I also have taken inspiration from other sources, not just, great spiritual teachers, but this is a wonderful book called The Book of Delights, where the author writes a couple of paragraphs, a few paragraphs about a different joy, a different delight, a different observation every day. And it's a really wonderful read as well. And, just coming back to this idea of training the mind or protecting the mind, right? It's so interesting that the science has now come to agree with this idea of doing a gratitude journal or a delight journal. In that, science is now showing that the more we train our brain to see wonder and delight and joy, then the more we will see it. And similarly, if we sort of always see the negative in something, now that doesn't mean, genuinely acknowledging things that are happening that are harmful in the world, that's different. But the more we train ourselves to see the sort of cynical side, then that's what we will end up seeing more and more of. So training the brain, protecting the brain, orienting the brain to being able to see in a certain way is delightful. One other thing that comes up for me in this Focus of the Month essay is the good reminder that for the most part, most of us have come to a spiritual practice or landed ourselves in a Jivamukti yoga class because things weren't going well, right? Because we were in an emergency, a grief, things were falling apart, and we felt the need to turn to something else. Like the old ways weren't working. We found the need to turn to some other way of seeing, some other way of being, some other set of practices or ideas to help us kind of turn things around. That's certainly true in my case, is that I was really suffering and having a hard time finding meaning and purpose, and all that, and delight in the world. So to acknowledge that, not only to acknowledge that, just to say we've all come from, suffering is pretty universal, so to speak. So we've all come from that place, but the trick becomes with yoga practice is when you start feeling better, that's not a sign to ease up on practice. Actually, that's a sign to keep going because inevitably another emergency will come along, right? If you're sort of not in a current life disaster, eventually one will come again. That's life, right? And so the practice is also sort of a helpful preparation, a helpful protection, helping to protect the mind and the heart for the next big event, right? I believe. Okay, let's see if I can quote this without messing it up. Sri Brahmananda Saraswati used to say, "You don't need to practice every day, but when you need your practice, you'll wish you had been practicing every day." Meaning, we build up a certain amount of courage, strength, fortitude, equanimity, patience, all these skills over time, right? with consistent practice, that then, when something drops off, those skills are ready for us. They're there for us. They're holding us up. They're holding us together. Whereas if we're sort of like, all's well, nothing's really going wrong, everything's fine, and then suddenly another life thing happens and surprises us, smacks us in the face, and then we haven't built up all the skills that practice gives us, then it makes it a little bit harder to traverse those harder times, right? So it's good to keep in mind. I like to keep that one in mind a lot. You don't need to practice every day, but when you need your practice, you'll wish you had been practicing every day.